John James running for the U.S. Senate, and there's a story that is going viral that was picked up by Fox News, a lot of conservatives. Apparently, a journalist was calling him to try and get a statement because it's a really tight race. I don't know if by the time you watch this, it's already concluded. But what ends up happening is she thinks she hangs up. She leaves a voicemail saying, hey, give me a call back. Thinks she hangs up, but then says something like, beep, could you imagine if he wins? They got it here. I don't want to swear. I'm trying to avoid swearing across the board because YouTube really punishes you for it. Reporter fired after caught on tape saying, F, could you imagine John James winning? I'm going to read through the story, but I want to say straight up, I feel really bad. This is a sad story to me. Look, journalists are human beings. They have opinions. When she called him and left him a professional message, I thought that's fine. And then after she got off the phone, she expressed an opinion. She got fired for it. She made a mistake. It's going to make the paper look bad. In my opinion, journalists should try to be as balanced as possible, so that is a pretty bad thing to say, period. We don't want our journalists to be overly I really don't want that candidate. We want our journalists to be here's my sound reasoning for wanting X, Y, or Z, and why I oppose X, Y, and Z. And that maybe that's her position. She was speaking off the cuff. There are a lot of people who've been caught on hot mics, and it's dude, come on. Sometimes we say things in private. But, but I do want to stress, it kind of exemplifies this problem of bias in the media that a lot of people talk about. This is one story, but, what are you supposed to expect when you've got someone, who's running, and this is the attitude you get when talking to a journalist? They don't want you to win. Are they going to provide favorable coverage for you? Why would you trust them? And thus, terminated. So, hey, while I feel bad because, this stuff happens. Could you imagine losing your job over making a dumb statement, from a voicemail? Hey, you know what? I don't know how we can solve the problem of bias in media. Maybe we can't. Maybe it's always been this way. But let's read through the story. A reporter from a Michigan newspaper was fired Monday night after calling Michigan Senate Republican candidate John James' campaign looking for an interview and thought she hung up the phone before leaving a voicemail saying, effing John James, that would suck. The news, and why? Seriously, why would that suck? Maybe they got a point. He seems like a pretty stand-up guy. Maybe I disagree with him. I'll say this too. There's a lot of politicians that I would be wow, that would suck if they won, for sure. So I can relate to that. But for the most part, when it comes to policy positions, especially from what I understand of John James, totally stand-up guy. Right? I would never be wow, that would suck, because he's the kind of guy I'd be man, I disagree with him, but he's a stand-up guy. For me, what would suck is Bob Menendez winning in New Jersey after what he's been accused of. He was indicted, mistrial, Senate Ethics Committee came out, made statements against him. To me, that would suck, right? John James, though, no matter who you are as a politician, I feel as long as you're trying to be a stand-up professional and be chill, I'm cool with it. Cultural issues are some of the most important things to me. And, if John James comes off as just your regular old dude, he seems like an all-American type, served, helicopter pilot, all that stuff. So it makes me feel kind of bad when you have this kind of negative language about someone. There are people, here's the thing, politics in America, there's no supervillains, man. Some people are bad and corrupt, for sure. But your average person is just somebody who thinks they're doing right by what they need to do, and I can respect that. Some people are really bad people who want to enact really bad things that hurt a lot of people. Yeah, those are the bad guys, but they're few and far between. The Democrats aren't supervillains. The Republicans aren't supervillains. Some of them prioritize certain things over other things, and for that, you might get left in the dust. You might be mad about it. But the truth is, most Democrats aren't evil. Most Republicans aren't evil. And I try to extend respect to people, even if I disagree with them. Here's a good example, right? It's not necessarily a politician, but you got Charlie Kirk here in this little video in the Daily Caller. I briefly met him. Completely disagree with a lot of what he says. I don't want to get too specific, but there was we'll leave it at that. He's a conservative, right? So there's a lot of positions that I am not in line with. I am pro-choice. People criticize me when I talk too much about the liberal stuff, so we'll move on from this. But the point is, I shook his hand and said, look, I'm a liberal, but I respect you for what you do, going out there and voicing your opinion and fighting for what you believe in a calm and rational way. And that's kind of stand-up stuff. The protesters threw stuff on him at one point. It's not cool. You know what I mean? I try to make sure I can say to you, listen, we need to have a conversation. I need to prove that I can best you in the marketplace of ideas. And one of the most effective ways to do that is to shake someone's hand. That when people are watching, they'll be oh, wow, he shook his hand. He's a polite guy. He's trying to take the moral high road. That really goes a long way. But let's read through the story. The news comes out after Brenda Battle, a reporter for the Huron Daily Tribune, left the voicemail on James's campaign office phone number at 3:40 p.m. Monday, requesting the interview for Wednesday, the day after the midterm elections. In the voicemail, she expresses her interest in interviewing James, believes she hung up the phone, and then goes on to curse about a possible James victory, saying she doesn't think it will happen. I've listened to the voicemail left by Brenda Battle to Mr. James's campaign and find no reason to defend this behavior, Huron Daily Tribune editor Kate Hessling said in a statement. Brenda Battle's employment has been immediately terminated. I feel like that's a little harsh, man. You know, that bums me out. I don't like to see this. I think we have to have compassion for people, even when they do something like this. Look, I think the appropriate response would be to get her off a political beat and say it was an inappropriate statement, she made a mistake, let's offer up her a chance for forgiveness, and we're going to move her to a different beat. Wouldn't that be fair? Can we have some reasonable, responses? But people are scared. People are scared of backlash. The Huron Daily Tribune sincerely apologizes to Mr. James and to the public. She continued, these statements do not represent the views of the Tribune as a whole, nor do they reflect the actions of a responsible journalist. Right, but she did make a mistake, okay? I am a firm believer in forgiveness. Forgiveness, man. In the audio of Battle's voicemail, first obtained by the Daily Caller News Foundation, Battle could be heard saying, hi, my name is Brenda Battle. I'm a reporter with the Huron Daily Tribune in Bad Axe, Michigan. I'm looking to set up an appointment with Mr. James for sometime on Wednesday for a phone interview regarding the election results. I'm probably going to send over an email and post his email with some details. If you'd like to call me back, my number is, and then she says, thank you. Battle attempts to hang up after giving her number, but the phone remains connected. Man, if he beats her, Jesus effing John James, that would suck. Woo. I don't think it's going to happen, though, she continues. And apparently John James published the voicemail in a video. You know, it's nothing but good for John James. It's going to get him press. The election's today. I mean, by the time you're watching this, who knows what's happened? I don't. James's campaign manager expressed her frustration with the media, mentioning, this has happened as the race has tightened significantly. It shows you that some media will do anything to keep the status quo and career politicians in power. The liberal media can't stand the idea of a job creator and combat veteran coming to Washington to shake up the system. This happened as we closed in within the margin of error. Right, but look, as much as I think it's fair to point out, media bias and hypocrisy, it's just one woman. She was fired. It's a little harsh, man. Journalists have opinions. If it doesn't reflect in their work, it's fine. We see her bias here, and I think the appropriate response, transfer to another department. Firing, I think, is harsh. Battle's comments come as James is in a tight race against Democratic Senator Debbie Stabenow in the November 6th midterm elections. So, I'm not going to play through this whole video, but let's see what he says.
Hi, my name is
Oh, okay. So I think they just play the actual voicemail. I don't want to play it because I think she swears. He maybe blurted out. But you guys get the idea, Journalists are biased. A lot of news organizations are biased. It is a fact, okay? Seriously, this is a fact, that new jobs being created in news media are appearing in blue districts and they're disappearing in red districts. As local newspapers go by the wayside and digital ventures start to appear, digital outlets can be anywhere. So companies are putting them in big cities, like New York, for instance. So a lot of the new digital media companies are in New York, and the people they hire are young progressives who then come in and have this opinion. And listen, that's a much bigger problem than this. But I think one of the issues here is that, the Daily Tribune, smaller local papers, have to maintain their objectivity and their credibility. And this is why I think this should be stressed for everybody who's got an issue with, the fake news and the lying press and all that stuff, whatever you want to call them. We need to defend local papers and figure out how to save this industry. Look at this. In my opinion, firing her was extreme. This woman called, left a voicemail, she expressed her opinion, she didn't mean to, and she's gone. Why? Because it reflects poorly on the company. They really do want to maintain some objectivity and balance in their reporting and be fair. So much so that when this woman, Brenda Battle, made a mistake, she's gone. They don't do that at Vox. They don't do that at the Huffington Post. They don't do that at Vice. They don't do that at The Verge. They don't. When these people, pump out this insane nonsense calling everybody, fascist or alt-right or whatever, they just say, yeah, too bad, do something about it. When The Verge wrote they wrote a piece about ContraPoints, they smeared Blair White, and then when Blair White was like, yo, this is wrong, they just smeared her even more. Look at this. I think this is a good example of the integrity of real journalism and how we should never confuse, as much as I hate to say it, Vice, I used to work there, but even Vice is falling into this into this area. Vox, less so BuzzFeed, but sometimes BuzzFeed. They fall into this category of where they're overly biased, mission-driven, and then people will conflate that with the Daily Huron, or the Huron Daily Tribune. The Huron Daily Tribune firing this woman is the perfect example of what newspapers do right. In my opinion, they went a little too far, for sure. Just move her to a different beat, get her off politics. But they are trying so hard to maintain, integrity that they're willing to terminate a woman over this one mistake. And you might think it's a big mistake, for sure. But, when you see a news organization issue a correction, good thing. The more corrections, the better. I was having a conversation with a journalist about this at Politicon. The more corrections you see from a reporter, that means they are willing to admit to their mistakes. And if you find somebody who never has mistakes, I question that. Because I've had mistakes, I've issued corrections, and that means people are willing to recognize their error. And a big list of mistakes isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's hard to know for sure. But anyway, look, the midterms today. You're watching this. I'm sure by the time you watch this, the midterms are long since over. Maybe. We'll see what happens. But I feel bad for this woman getting fired. We'll see if John James wins. I respect the Huron Daily to a very high degree for having terminated her in the first place, but I wish they could have just moved her somewhere else. So, there you go. Anyway, the next couple of videos I'm going to do are not political. The next video I'm going to talk about is the world of video games, Diablo Immortal. If you're a video gamer, you'll probably be interested in this. We're going to talk about the shares, so stick around. That video will be up in just a few minutes.